Okay, let's take a look at the project settings here in Cinema 4D. So this is going to be the first place that you're going to start when you start a new project. So if I go to File, New, my project settings are open by default. Now, if you don't have your project settings up for some reason, you can get to the project settings by hitting Control D or Command D on a Mac, and it'll pull up the project settings here. Something else I want you to be aware of in Cinema 4D that is a little different than most 3D packages is that you can have multiple scenes open at one time. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, let's say that I was going to take this landscape object and I wanted to copy it. And then I wanted to go into my other scene. I could paste that into this scene. You just can't do that in other packages. That's really a nice option to have. Let's get back to our project settings. Project scale. The way it works in C4D now is a unit of 1 meter is now equal to 100 centimeters and 1 kilometer equals 1,000 meters. You can come over here and you can change from units of measure, kilometers, meters, centimeters, miles, yards, feet, inches. If you're an architect, you'd be looking at these. So you have a lot of options and flexibility when it comes to unit of measure. FPS or frames per second. Some common numbers that you may find in here, 23.976 or 24, which is going to be film, 29.976 or 30, which is video. You could take this up to 120 frames per second if you wanted to get slow motion effect, but this is going to affect it globally. Your minimum and maximum times, these are the same numbers that you're going to find down here in these two boxes here. This is going to control how long your animation is going to be. So if I change this to 120 here, you'll notice that it updates here. The preview minimum, preview maximum time. This is how much of this timeline I'm going to see at any one time. So right now I'm looking at 120 frames. Let's say that I only want to look at 60 at a time. Well, now I've got 0 to 60 in here, even though I have a 120 frame animation. Level of detail. This is exactly what it says. It controls the level of detail in your scene. Why would you want to have this type of control? Well, let's say that you had a scene that had a lot of elements in it, and it was starting to get slow and clunky. You could take this down to 80, 70%, and the overall level of detail in your scene is going to go down, and therefore it's going to speed up your scene. You can also control level of detail on individual objects with the display tab, but this is object level control, whereas back here in the project settings, this is a global control. A couple other things we should go over. You can control your default object color. If you want to change it to another color, you can do that here. Linear workflow we'll talk about later when we're compositing, but this helps get accurate colors in your scene. Info. This is sort of like metadata. You can put information about the author, copyright, info, specific things about the scene that may be helpful to somebody else that's going to take this scene after you have it. Dynamics. This has to do with the dynamics engine that's built into Cinema 4D. We're not going to cover this in this title, so we won't go into this. Bottom line, when you start a new project, the project settings is the first place that you're going to want to go to set up your scene.